Hey everyone, Peter Collins. I'm here with Mike Piker and Mike Perner, and this is Then and Now, and we're on the site of Tatassit Beach. And Tatassit Beach was, probably one of the most, famous and popular places on Lake Quinsigamond through all its different iterations. It started in 1889 as a club, and went out and eventually became a beach. And they had a nightclub over on the island, and they had a restaurant, and they rented out apartments in the mansion. It was just a going concern, and it was open until into the mid 70s, the 1970s. So it was around a long time. A lot of people have memories of it. There was a big Shrewsbury iconic institution, and there was always when the mansion was on the island, it was kind of in disrepair. Everybody had visions of it. Being rebuilt and brought back to life, and it just never happened. It started out in 1889 as a club, and then the club kind of went into 1928, and we'll talk about that in a bit. And in 1928, after the club had started to become inactive, the members decided to sell the property, and they sold it to a gentleman called Felix Pollitt. Pollitt. And Felix, young guy, 28 years old, he had swam at Sunset Beach, which was a public beach or privately owned beach on Lake Quinsigamond, and he thought it was a great idea, so he opened a beach here. So he slowly improved the property. If you look behind us, this was actually the beach area right here. This would have been all sand, and there were all kinds of attractions. And luckily, we have a couple of gentlemen with us here today that actually went to the beach as kids. And so they're going to go and tell us a little bit about what happened. Start from the beginning, when Felix first bought it.
Well, when he first bought it, he started improving it. He built a diving tower in back of us there. He built rafts that you could swim out to, which I experienced as a kid. Behind us was the toboggan chute, which you would climb up a bunch of stairs carrying a wooden toboggan, put it on metal rails, climb on, go down into the water until you finally, the gravity took over and the toboggan would start to sink. Then you have to swim back with the toboggan with you.
Did it have a rope? Were you tied to it? Or
No. You just held on.
It was like loose?
And there was some chicken wire off to the left and right to semi-protect somebody who, for whatever reasons, might want to abort the ride coming down the slope. And apparently somebody, Mike might know the end of that story, at least tried to slow down the descent coming down the chute and caught their fingers and the protective
toes.
Wire and their toes.
It was a husband trying to be a good husband because his wife was scared. And he caught his toe in the chicken wire.
Summarily sliced it off?
Well, kind of, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But today you would never see that with all the
safety concerns
things.
they have, yeah.
Yep.
So there was other stuff too. There was regular slides over here, and
there was a slide over there. Just to go back a little bit to revisit, when the beach was closing up in the 1990s, Leon King owned it. Mm-hmm. He was losing the beach. I was involved in researching for my book, which you had there. And he said, come over and look around, take whatever you want. So he gave me one of the toboggan, one of the booths from the snack bar, a couple of sconces from the booth, the tap from the bar at the nightclub, and so on and so forth. But the booth and the toboggan chute are now up at the Historical Society because they just took up too much room.
So a little bit of the history. Felix had it till 1974 or so, and then he just needed to get out.
In the 70s, he offered it to the town for $125,000. You have to remember there was this property plus over across the street. They said, we don't want it. So then I believe Judge Gould bought it for a couple of years. Then at some point it transferred to Leon King, who owned the property.
His son, currently Christian King, is a city councilor in the city of Worcester.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
Yeah, because I met him and he talked about how he kind of grew up here. Yeah.
But the problem was he was a Seventh-day Adventist. He wouldn't open on Saturdays. So for a seasonal business in the summer, that didn't work out. So he ended up losing the property.
Yeah. If you have a beach, you kind of have to be open on Saturdays, I guess.
In the summer.
So there's so many good weekend days in the
Yeah,
summer in New
yeah.
England, you know.
All right, so and that's cool. So from there, it went to, it got auctioned off. Is that right?
Got
after
auctioned off to Bobby Salinas, who kept it for many years, hoping to cash in on the real estate boom. That didn't work out. And then in the late 90s, I believe, he was going to be in trouble about environmental concerns with the
The dilapidated clubhouse
Right.
on the island.
by then it was falling down,
Right.
so, and it went up in flames.
that? It was past repair.
Yes.
I remember that night.
Huge fire.
Yeah. Yep. Here, we're basically on the south side of where the beach was going to be, right in front of the island. And in this little area right behind us was kind of the kiddie pool. And according to, again, Mike and Mike here, that they actually came here and they swam in there when they were kiddies.
Little kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
So
called
how was
it
that?
a crib, actually. That was the phrase for it. I mean, little white picket fence in the water, all right, for those kids who were just learning how to swim, so the parents could keep an eye on them if they kept an eye on them. You know, kids being kids, they're jumping, splashing, you know, and all that. Also, right where those white birch trees are, there was a pole. You had to climb up the steps of the pole and then go out on a platform. And there was a zip line. It was one of the first zip lines I ever knew of in my life, that went from those birch trees pretty much right over to here, where the shoreline is.
Into
and
the water.
You held on to a steel bar that ran on a couple rollers on a wire, and you'd go all the way across, and you had to let go before you got to the end, because pretty much you came right to the shoreline here, and otherwise you'd be landing in about 12 inches of water, and you have a few little scrapes on yourself if you didn't let go, you know, 3/4 of the way across. But kids would line up to climb up the pole to take their turn, to pull the rope in to get the T-bar and hang on to it and walk off the platform and, you know, let go, next, you know, and that's how it was. So it was fun back then, you know.
That's right. Did they have lifeguards and they have, you know, what they have for safety?
You know, it was as
Had a lifeguard.
yeah, but
One.
as usual, beach areas like this are controlled pandemonium.
It's it over here.
There's people flying around doing this and that, and you know how much they were keeping an eye on everything may be
Right.
questionable, but whatever.
Right. It's not like today. I was a lifeguard for the state, and every little section there was a lifeguard. You had a lifeguard at the kiddie pool. You had a lifeguard at the 2 diving boards. You had a lifeguard everywhere.
I don't think it was that well orchestrated. Let me just say that.
They're well guarded.
Yeah. We'll leave it at that.
Okay. So, and did adults go on the aerial? What they call it the aerial shoot. Is that was the
Yes,
official
they
name?
did. Yeah, but you know, it was very shallow at this end, so you kind of go into the weeds in the water there. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
kind of swim over and go do it
Get
again.
back up and, again and keep going
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, you had to probably be about 10 years old to be able to reach the bar, maybe 12. 4 or 5 years old, you couldn't reach up to grab the iron T-bar to be able to
Right.
then swing. There was no sign in terms of any height or age limit, but if you were old enough to reach up, you could try it. It was pretty much it, and
So if
climb
you-
up there.
So if your parents wanted to bring you over there and lift you up and put you on the thing,
I might have saw that once, but frankly, that wasn't it. It was pretty much, you had to be tall enough, big enough to be able to reach up to hold on to the T-bars, and it was pretty much kind of an adolescent teenage thing, you know? Yeah.
so it sounds like your mom and dad used to bring you down here, drop you off, and take off. Is that what happened?
That probably is the story, or somehow or other I got a ride down here from some family's friend who said, okay, you guys are going to go there for the day, fine. All right, we'll know where they are for so many hours, and they did their thing, and as it's summertime, we did our thing, you know what I mean?
All right, I guess so. And we wanted to hang around with little Mike.
I have a story about that. Now, to get in, you had to pay $0.25. Felix would stand at the entrance. There was a turnstile there. Where's your quarter? Where's your quarter? He had a cigar in his mouth. Well, my father was a firefighter in town. and they used to do fire inspections. So me and my friends would come down, and they'd want a quarter. So my father came down one day, and he says, this is my kid. These are his friends. I think maybe they could get in for free. And he said, what are you talking about? He says, well, the next time we do a fire inspection, there may be a problem. He says, okay, go ahead. So ever after that, we just went through.
Well, Jimmy Vaughn, if you're watching this, okay, just fast forward through this part of it.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So the club started. Well, the club started in 1889. So they called them the Tatassits. The Tatassits came down, and they had, I guess, they were coming from a skating party, and Mike can elaborate on that a little bit better. And they came up with this brainstorm that they wanted to start a canoe club. And canoes in 1889 weren't, they weren't very, I guess, popular or prevalent on Lake Quinsigamon. So it was kind of a new thing, and they started the club, and they elected officers. They had a commodore and a vice commodore and a purser and all that kind of stuff. And they were very kind of a closed club, and they figured out that they needed to kind of expand and open up a little bit more, which they did. And very soon, they decided they needed more room. So they went around looking for land. They originally were down closer to White City in one of the members' boathouses, and then they looked for their own piece of property, and they discovered Plum Island. I think they looked at what was the other island they looked over, like, very briefly.
Not sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
It escapes my Sugarloaf.
Yep.
Sugarloaf Island?
Sugarloaf Island. Okay.
Yep.
Yep. So they looked at that very briefly and decided that wasn't good for them, and they picked this spot. And then in 1891, they put up the clubhouse, and that was right out there. So this bridge that's here right now is basically pretty much in the same spot that the old bridge was in. And if you look through that in the view back then, you would have seen the clubhouse there. And the clubhouse was just a gorgeous, eclectic building with decks all over it. You could see the lake from like every room. It was a very cool place. So,
Another thing we haven't even talked about yet is the name. Where did the name Tatassit came from? Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I remember Al Michalak, if you remember him, an old Shrewsbury resident, told me, well, it was a band of the Nipmuc Indians called the Tatatsu, and that's where then Tatassit then came from. That's at least what he told me. I think that might be correct.
From I believe it's basically correct, but I think somewhere up around the north part of Worcester, there was some Indian name, Tatassit something or other. So he pulled it from that.
Okay.
And one of the other things is when they first came here, there's a photo of the first meeting on Tatassit Island, they called it, with a bunch of them. They had an organ set up on a stand, and they had these outfits, black outfits with like kind of berets with the Tatassit Canoe Club logo on their shirts, which they wore to row their war canoe, as they called it. What happened to the war canoe, we don't know, but it held 12 people, and they would go up and down the lake and became members of the American Canoe Association at one point. But the first Sunday on Tatassit Island was right here with the organ and a bunch of them with their outfits on.
And then they had a kind of a era where they called themselves the Totem Sun.
The Totem of the Sun.
Okay.
The Totem of the Sun was the logo on their shirts. And they had actually a song, which we have in the book. There's part of that there, with the wording of it. And somewhere I have a copy of the actual music to it. And I'm not a musical person, but I knew somebody who was. So I said, how does this go? So he took it and he played it like on a piano. And he said, da 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 da. And it had the whole thing there. Yeah.
Apparently they even had a stained glass window in their
Yes,
clubhouse.
in the clubhouse.
Of a totem pole sun type artistic stained glass creation.
Was it their logo in stained
Yeah.
glass?
Yeah,
It was the
yeah,
thing that was on
yeah,
their shirts.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And the war canoe was actually built here in Worcester, right?
Well, they built it first, and then there was a little bit of a problem. They were going down the lake, and it started to leak, and they basically tried to get back to shore and had to have it rebuilt because it didn't work out well. But after that, then they used to go up and down the lake, yeah, with it.
Yeah, 'cause it was pretty iconic in its day. Everyone
Yes,
knew about it. A 12-man canoe. That would have been pretty
Yeah.
cool.
they call them Indian war canoes, I believe.
And I still think one of you guys has that somewhere.
Yeah.
You just you hold
It's
them
in my
back.
cellar.
I've got a wood canvas canoe made by another canoe making outfit right near, I think, that guy's boathouse that we just mentioned. But that's only 1910. That's not
Right, that was-
1890.
20 years
yeah.
after
Yeah.
that. Yeah. It was pretty cool.
I have to mention the booth from the snack bar and the toboggan. Apparently, we're becoming a little bit overwhelming, too big in our house. So my wife asked me to put them somewhere else. So they're now at the Historical Society.
See, you need a garage like Mike has. You can put all your stuff in a shed.
Well, then those things become overwhelmed with stuff too.
Well, that's pretty a cool thing. And then the canoe for a while, because when Paula took over, he put money in and refurbished the clubhouse and turned it into a restaurant
The Hi-Hat.
and the Hi-Hat. And
Hi-Hat
there was
nightclub.
there was a guy on the other side of the
Because it was a hi-hat,
Yeah.
he had a tuxedo and a top hat. And as you came across the bridge, he would bow, take his hat off, and welcome you to the hi-hat. That was, I'm not sure if that was before or after Prohibition. During Prohibition, they took the bridge out, so you couldn't get over there without a boat. So that gave them some time to kind of like dispose of any liquor.
Contraband, yeah.
contraband.
Yeah.
So the authorities had to come over in a boat.
Rowboat.
Anybody, that was going to go over there had to go over in a boat. So it gave the proprietors, again, time to ditch the stuff.
Well, they didn't have much place to hide, though. I mean, it's a little
They
island.
dumped it
The
out.
sad thing is they could run to the other side of the island and cry as they emptied it.
Seems they'd have like kind of a hidden cellar or something. I don't know.
But then later on in the 1940s, that was converted into summer apartments that you could rent out for the summer. I know some people that did that. And of course, later on, then it just went downhill.
Right. I remember, and I think that the judge owned it at the time.
Judge Gould.
Yeah, and they had one of his nephews or somebody had it was a Halloween thing, and they had a
Haunted house.
haunted house there.
You
And
could
I
go
remember
through
going
it.
through it. It was the first time I'd ever been in a haunted house where they actually touched you, like you went through and like someone grabbed you, and that was weird. And but it was that was the only time I was ever in the building. But even then, and this was the 70s. This was like probably 76 or so, I think. It was rickety. Like it was kind of. I was kind of nervous being in there.
Perfect haunted
And there was
house.
places you couldn't. Yeah, well, there's places you couldn't. They no, you
couldn't
can't go
walk,
over there. And it was
yeah.
roped off because it wasn't safe.
By
'Cause
the
you went up in the second floor.
By the late 90s, I was researching my first book there, and Leon was losing the beach. And he said, come over and look around or whatever you want. So I took a bunch of photos in there. You
Yeah.
could still see the stage. You could still see the bar, which I have the tap to. But the booths were thrown all over the place. They actually had a mural on the wall from the 1939 World's Fair of a tower, which I have a picture of.
That's pretty cool.
That's gone now, but that's the way it was over there, you know. All kinds of interesting things, but now it's all gone.
Now it's all gone. It's a sad thing. Well, it's beautiful now, and it's just one of those, I guess, great memories, and that's what I think makes Lake Quinsigamon such a rich, place to live at, because there's so much history and there's so many, I guess, cool and interesting things that happened around here that existed, and so you know, it's always fun to kind of go back and see that stuff and what it was like before, and you know, I think probably the fact that the highways got better and there was attractions, you could get on the Cape and you could go all over the place.
Maine,
It was just
baseball.
easy access to everything, and you know that you know the beaches around here kind of got you know forgotten and disinterested.
Passed by. Yeah.
So I mean, but you know, that said, Sunset is still going, still going after all these years, and it was Sunset existed before Tatassit. So
In the summer, when I was a kid, the parking lot across the street, on the weekends, there would be buses coming out of Boston. The parking lot would be packed with buses and cars, people just coming out for the day or you know, for the weekend. Yep,
yeah, so
in the 60s.
very cool thing. And also, just to kind of point this out too, is that you look at some of the superstructure around the island right now, and it's that wall was there when they built that when they put the clubhouse up in the 1800s, late 1800s. So kudos to the stonemasons who did that, and it still exists today.
Yeah. 100,
Oh yeah, that's
120, 30 years later.
that's impressive. I mean, I'm sure it could use some pointing, but
Yeah.
it's still impressive that it's standing up there, and from a distance it looks good. I got a lot of the research from Tatassit, all the things that I know. I actually got from Mike Perner's great book about Lake Quinsigamond, and you know, Mike likes the big reveal. So I'm reading the last paragraph of the Tatassit thing, and he starts to talk about, you know, this person that kind of came up and all of that. I'm going to let Mike
Yeah.
take over from there, but you know,
He was a cousin.
a great beginning. Sounded like it started here here at Tatassit Beach.
Felix Pollitt's nephew lived in the Bronx, and his family was very worried about him, that he would never amount to anything, because all he wanted to do was doodle or draw things. So in the summer, they would send him up here to Uncle Felix to try and instill some of his business sense. Felix owned a business at like age 17, a tire store. Then he bought the beach and so on. So they wanted him to try and mentor him. But all Bob Kane wanted to do was work at the snack bar. He'd skim a little money from the snack bar and go to the movies in Worcester. And the rest of the time he wanted to draw pictures of the girls on the beach. Well, a couple of years later, he ended up drawing a couple of figures, and it turned out to be Batman and Robin. So his future, they never had to worry about again. The last we saw of him was in probably the late 90s, something like that, at a premiere of one of the Batman movies in Hollywood with two blonde starlets. He was in his 80s or whatever, one on each arm with a big smile on his face. So all they're worrying about his future didn't matter. It was Batman and Robin, and here we are today.
He
Yeah, right.
created the comics, and
Yep.
you know, he did well, and I think probably even did better later in life, because I think Batman and Robin had like a resurgence a couple times. It was a television series with Adam West, right?
Yes.
And then
The
the
movies.
Batman movies came out in the O's, right, 2000s, and
Yeah.
they became big, and he probably got inevitably residuals, so that he lived probably quite comfortably towards the end of his life.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to but Bob Kane. Yeah, and he I don't know if he sold it or because DC Comics published Batman and Robin. So
The story goes, his cousin still lived in the area here. I got to know them through the research for the book. But he could draw Batman and Robin with one hand, just like that. And he actually sent them a copy of that to my cousins. It's in the book there.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one hand.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to just another quick thing, and then we'll get out of here. But you know, you talked about Pollitt, and he was a great entrepreneur, but he had some. I mean, he was really a go-getter, because he was one of the first guys to actually figure out that you should rent beach chairs
In Miami Beach.
in Miami Beach. So in the
Yes.
winters, he would run this place in the summertime, and in the winter he'd travel all over the world. And he in Miami Beach, he went down and he rented beach chairs. And,
Lifelong bachelor.
okay, well, there's something to be said about that, I guess, if you want to travel all the time. But Yeah. It was, that's pretty
Yeah.
impressive. It's pretty cool.
Yep.
He was quite a guy.
Yeah.
All right, so hey, that's going to wrap it up for the Tatassit Beach then and now. And it was, I think it was a great trip. I still miss the mansion when I drive by, but that's I guess the way things go. And so till next time, thanks for watching.